My mother pushed a cashier's check across the dinner table, and it slid to a stop next to my sister's plate, not mine. $850,000. The room erupted. My aunt clapped so hard her bracelets sang. My father stared at his mashed potatoes like they owed him money. My sister, Blair, pressed that check to her chest like she'd just been handed proof she was going to live. Nobody looked at me. I was 31. I had done that family's books. Unpaid for 8 years. And I sat at the far end of the table doing what I always did, the quiet math nobody asked for. 2 weeks later, my mother told me to pack. Here's what you should know before we start being told to leave wasn't the cruelest thing that family ever did to me. It wasn't close. 4 years later, they'd come after the thing I built with my own 2 hands. And they'd use my own name to try to take it. Welcome to Stillwater Storytime, where the women who got written off finally get to hold the pen. If a story like this has ever sat down at your kitchen table, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And subscribe, because you'll want to see how this one ends. My name is Marlo Sutton. I grew up in Millhaven, Ohio, a farm town so small the water tower had graduation years painted on it going back to 1958. My family owned Sutton Feed and Farm Supply, 3 generations of it. And my mother, Vivian, ran that store like a woman conducting a symphony only she could hear. The dinner had a theme, and the theme was my sister. Vivian tapped her wine glass with a butter knife and announced the family was investing $850,000 in Blair's Dream, an event venue called Windsong Manor. The kind of place brides would drive 2 hours to cry in the parking lot over. Blair did her pageant cry, the one that never smudges her mascara. My Aunt Denise clapped until her rings clicked. My father, Roy, nodded at his plate like it had asked him a question. I asked what the projected overhead was for year 1. That was all asked politely by the woman who'd filed this family's taxes since she was 23. The clapping stopped like someone cut a wire. My mother set her glass down slow and said, "We could talk about the boring parts later." Everyone laughed the relieved laugh people do when somebody else just got stepped on instead of them. I wasn't jealous of the money. I want to be fair to myself about that. It scared me more than it stung, because I knew what this family actually had and what funding somebody's dream costs when the dream doesn't pay its own electric bill. But my mother watched me the rest of that dinner, not angry, appraising, like a woman doing inventory, deciding which items had stopped earning their shelf space. 2 days later, she called me into her office. The store's back room moved into the house, with a filing wall and a notary stamp sitting in its cradle like a crown. She told me the house needed to breathe while Blair built her dream. And every dollar the family had was going where things grow. I told her I'd kept the store's books for 8 years without a paycheck. She looked at me like I'd brought up the weather. That was your room and board. This family invests. It doesn't do charity. I asked where I was supposed to go. She squared a stack of papers and said the sentence I still hear at 2 a.m. "You're 31, Marlo. No husband, no plan, no spark. You have 2 weeks." Then, softer, which made it worse. "You don't water rocks." "Sweetheart." I nodded, because I'm the kind of woman who nods, and walked out past the filing wall where my whole paper life lived in her cabinets, my W-2S. 8 years of me in manila folders with her handwriting on the tabs. I thought she was cutting me out of the family. She wasn't. She was writing me down. And there's a difference between those 2 things that would nearly cost me everything. 4 years later, in a bank envelope with my name on the front, number, part 2, the number under the lamp. The check bothered me for a simpler reason than pride. Math, Feed stores in towns of 4,000 people don't have $850,000 lying around. That night, I found the office lights still on, papers fanned across the desk. I wasn't snooping, I was raised to read whatever's in front of me. On top of the stack sat a closing statement, 90 acres off County Road 9. My grandmother's orchard, sold to a developer for just under $900,000 after taxes. Grandma Opal had died 2 years earlier, gloves still on in her garden. And I could hear her voice because she'd said it to both of us. The summer I turned 26, standing among the apple trees. When I'm gone, this land splits 2 ways. You hear me, 2 granddaughters, 2 halves. She never changed the will in time. Everything passed to my mother, clean and legal. The law doesn't care what got promised in an orchard. So there it was. In 10-point phone, the $850,000 wasn't a gift. It was something being taken, half of it. The half that was supposed to be a promise, handed over at a dinner with applause. I went back upstairs to a room with 2 weeks left in it and a cold. Specific question opened up in me if they'd take that so easily. What else had they already taken? Number, part 3, 11 boxes. You can fit 31 years into 11 boxes. Books in 4, clothes in 3. 1 box that was only paper transcripts. My notary certificate. Ledgers I'd copied for my own records. Because old habits are load-bearing. At the bottom of a drawer, I found a postcard Grandma Opal mailed the year before she died. A picture of live oaks on the front. On the back, in her stubby pencil times, saw a fig tree growing straight out of a stone wall today. Grow anyway. Oh, Blair leaned in my doorway my last night, wine glass in hand. Don't make it weird. Mar, it's not personal. Mom just believes in me. I asked if she'd read the contractor bids yet. She rolled her eyes and said I sounded like an accountant. I said I was one. For 1 second. It was almost us. Again, 11 and 14. Before the pageants took her somewhere I couldn't follow. My father passed my door twice that night. Heavy in his work socks. Both times he slowed. Both times he kept walking. He left 2 folded 20s under my windshield wiper instead. No note. I kept that postcard in my glove box for 4 years. I still know both lines by heart. My last day at the store. I trained my own replacement, a bookkeeping service that cost more per month than I'd cost per year, and handed my mother a single typed page, a request to be removed as a member of Sutton Family Holdings, LLC. When I was 24, my parents had formed that entity for tax purposes and put my name on it as a 20% member. I never got a distribution. Never had a vote that mattered. My mother slid the page under her stapler without reading it and smiled at a customer over my shoulder. Paperwork later. Marlo, we're busy building something. Remember that page under the stapler. It matters more than anything else in this story. The first night of my new life, I sat in a motel and made a ledger. Assets, $1,800. A Corolla with 130,000 miles on it. 11 boxes. 1 postcard. Liabilities, none. A strange kind of rich. At the top of the page I wrote, "Time's rock bottom isn't dramatic. It's mostly administrative. Cities want degrees. Small towns want history. The coast wants hands. I picked a town on the Chesapeake called Marsh Point, where my family had once vacationed the smell of diesel. Crab shacks. Men yelling about invoices down at the docks. I drove 8 hours east with everything I owned sliding around behind me and decided to take that as a sign, closing out my old accounts. The floor gave a A college fund my grandmother had started when I was born, one I'd been told at 19 wasn't performing, had been cashed out in full a decade earlier. $22,000. Withdrawn when I was 19. Authorized signature on file, Vivian Sutton. Custodian. The date matched the spring. Blair's first failed business collapsed. I had asked about that account back then. I was told there'd been a bookkeeping error, and then I was told I was being disrespectful. And in my family, the second sentence always ends the conversation. This didn't start with a check on a table. It started when I was a teenager, and it had my mother's signature on it. I froze my credit, closed every account with only my name on it, and mailed a formal letter requesting removal from Sutton Family Holdings. Certified 9 days later, the green receipt card came back, signed in my mother's tidy hand. I filed it. Vivian taught me one true thing without meaning to paper is the only witness that doesn't change its story at Sunday dinner. I cleaned offices at night, a dentist, a realtor, a marine insurance agent, and answered phone stays for a crab boat captain whose filing system was, in his words, the truck on a laundromat bulletin board. I found a QuickBooks certification course for $380. I had $410 that month. I wrote the check with a hand that only shook a little. The instructor looked at my sample ledgers the first night and asked where I'd studied. My mother's back office. I said, she laughed. She thought it was a joke. 14 months after I left, a cousin forwarded me a news clip, Blair in a hard hat that had never met dirt, gold shovel in hand. Groundbreaking on Winsong Manor. My mother quoted like scripture, we're a family that invests in winners. I felt the old reflex twitch call, warn, be useful. I looked at it like a lab specimen. Then I blocked my mother's number and Blair's. My father didn't own a cell phone, so he was grandfathered into the silence. My aunt I kept on mute. Every family needs one open channel, and hers had the best gossip anyway. It would be 4 years before I heard my mother's voice again. When I did, she was crying like her heart was breaking. It still wasn't an apology. I passed my certification in March and hung a magnetic sign on my Corolla the same week Tidewater Ledger Co. My first client, a crab captain named Otto, dumped a shoebox labeled Taxes on my counter. The government claimed he owed $12,000. It took me 9 days to find 3 years of missed fuel tax credits and a late filing penalty that shouldn't have existed. He owed nothing and got $9,000 back. He looked at my invoice, which I'd written small because I was scared of him, and said the sentence that built my business, this number's wrong. You charge too little. Fix it. Or I'll tell everyone you're cheap instead of good. He paid me double and told the whole marina. Within a month, I had the bait shop, the ice house, 2 charter boats. Meanwhile, news from home arrived through my cousin Ray, who texts like a police scanner. Blair fired her second contractor because he didn't understand the vision. A payment plan for $11,000 appeared for a project that had opened with $900,000 in the bank. I did the quiet math nobody asked for, because apparently that's just the shape of my soul. That September, a hurricane put 4 inches of bay water in my new office. I hauled client records to storage for 3 hours while the sky turned the color of a bruise. My own furniture I left to swim desks are replaceable. A crabber's fuel logs are not. Afterward, I set up a folding table outside the church, free help with storm claims. When the water went down, 15 new clients walked up my stairs. The storm had also knocked one particular house on the bay half to its knees, a gray shingled place built in 1958. Out-of-state heirs finally quitting on it. It went to county auction. Cash. As is. I had $96,000 saved, dollar by dollar. At the courthouse steps, it came down to me and a flipper in a golf vest bidding with his chin. He stopped at 82,000. My own voice came out flat and final. 88. The gavel came down. A broken house on the bay belonged to a woman who'd arrived 4 years earlier with 11 boxes and a shaking hand. A standard title search on my new house turned up something unexpected. The clerk called me. Careful. Are you aware you're an active member of an LLC in Ohio? Sutton Family Holdings has UCC financing statements filed against it. Received ones. A UCC filing is the public fingerprint of borrowing. My name was a 20% limb of a company actively pledging its body to a bank. And I hadn't signed or seen any of it. You don't keep a name on a company out of spite. Spite is free. And my mother never held a free asset in her life. You keep a name because it's worth something to somebody. I hired a lawyer, Patricia Volk, before I hired a plumber. She read my folder, the certified receipt, 3 written demands, all ignored, and sent a third letter. Statutory language, hard to ignore. The signature card came back. Then, for months, nothing. At 1 a.m, 4 years of silence broke. Blair, drunk in that careful way where every word gets placed like stemware, running a business, she said, was like drowning in front of an audience that paid for the ticket. Then, small and flat, it was supposed to be me. It was always supposed to be me. When she spoke again, something rehearsed replaced the smallness. Mom says, when it all comes right, you owe us. The line went dead. Winsong Manor died the way businesses die slowly. Then all in one morning, the gates were chain locked. A county tax notice taped beside them. In Millhaven, the story got rewritten without me there to check the ledger times, poor Blair. Dreamed so big. Meanwhile, her sister sat on her money and wouldn't lift a finger. My mother never said it outright. She just tilted her head and let the town fill in the rest. That Monday, a certified bank envelope found me. First Union Trust. Notice to Guarantor Re Sutton Family Holdings, LLC. Commercial note. Original principal $460. Ling, ling, ling. Status, 90 days, delinquent. My own name in the salutation. Like a hook in a lip. I read it standing. Then sitting, hands flat on the desk because they wanted to shake. $460,000. More than my house and my best year combined. For a loan I had never seen. On a company I'd begged 3 times in writing to release me from. A guarantee requires a signature. Mine, apparently, which meant somewhere in a bank's file drawer sat a piece of paper with my name on it that I had never signed. Patricia demanded the loan file. The bank stalled. Into the wait. My mother called, already in tears, not Blair's pageant tears. Something wetter and more convincing. My father wasn't getting any younger. She said, Blair was going through so much. Then we hear about you down there. Sweetheart, your little firm, your house on the water. We're so proud of what you've built. Come to dinner Sunday. 31 years. And there it finally was, exactly when my signature became worth more than my absence. I went anyway. Dinner was perfect. Every dish I'd loved at 9. My father produced a shoebox of newspaper clippings about my firm he'd apparently kept for years. Then my mother folded her hands like she was chairing a meeting, and Blair produced printed slides times Winsong Manor. Chapter 2. My name under the words Times Financial Director. You're the missing piece. Mar. My mother took my hand, hers trembling. We were wrong about you. This is your chance to finally be part of this family. I want to be honest for 30 seconds. I priced it. The dinners, my father's clippings on a refrigerator, a seat with the times we times in it. Then she slid a folder across the table and named the number. The refinance needs $300,000. The bank just needs your signature. Sweetheart, you're the only one of us they trust now. A door swung shut in me, calm and mechanical. No, I won't be signing anything. Not anything with Sutton Family Holdings on it. Ever again. My mother's warmth drained out like water finding a crack. Blair shoved back her chair and left. At the door, I asked the question Patricia told me not to ask yet. Mom, the delinquency notice. Why did it come to me? She didn't blink. I'm sure, I don't know, banks make mistakes. My mother has never believed banks make mistakes. It's the one faith we've always shared. My father caught me at the car. Your grandmother liked you best. He said first words all night and pushed folded pages through the window before walking back into a house he could no longer afford. At a motel down the road, under a lamp the color of weak tea. I photographed the folded square untouched, time-stamped, then opened it. A photocopied commercial guarantee. $460,000. Guarantor Marlowe A. Sutton, a signature above my typed name, mine. Or something wearing its clothes. Dated the previous October. A night I'd been 400 miles away at a client's restaurant with 2 witnesses and a security camera. Below the forged signature sat a notary seal. State of Ohio. Someone hadn't just signed my name, someone had sworn. Before a commissioned officer of the state. That I'd stood there and signed it myself. Patricia laid it all out on her conference table, the receipt, the refusal. 3 demands predating the forgery. My alibi. 2 roads. She said, litigate the note for years. Maybe win. Or file an affidavit of forgery. Banks don't defend forged paper, they cut it loose. But this doesn't stay in a drawer. Marlowe, it becomes a referral. It reaches the state. I told her the temptation I'd been carrying. I could just pay it. It would all just stop. Yes. She said, the question is what you'd be buying. While I decided, they answered for me, a process server handed me a lawsuit. Sutton v. Sutton, my 8 years of unpaid labor, they claimed, created a constructive partnership. And my firm and my house were its fruits. Demand $290,000. Page 11 held their attorney's engagement letter, dated 3 weeks before the reconciliation dinner. They'd hired a lawyer to sue me, then set the table. The pot roast was discovery. The pie was a deposition. One evening, Patricia pulled out a magnifying loupe like a stamp collector. Every notary in Ohio has a public commission number. Run it tonight. Call me before anyone else. Sitting in my truck with the crickets going, I already knew what I'd find. Vivian R. Sutton, Notary Public, State of Ohio, 22 years, in good standing. My mother's seal, on my forged name, sworn to the state. The subpoenaed loan file completed the arithmetic. Her notary log, surrendered under subpoena, showed the entry in her own hand times Marlowe A. Sutton, personally known to me. A handwriting examiner matched the forged signature's pen pressure to a decade of my sister's birthday cards. Blair wrote my name. My mother stamped it true. One daughter's hand, the other daughter's name. The mother's seal binding them together. At mediation, my mother set down a Tupperware of lemon bars like a flag on a beach. Their attorney told a beautiful story about a devoted family and a daughter who prospered while her people drowned. Their opening offer dropped the lawsuit if I quietly assumed the note. Patricia dealt out our folder clean and slow, ending with the notary log page alone. Their attorney went carefully blank. My mother asked for 10 minutes alone with me. In a side room with a humming vent, she took off the performance like earrings after church. You were never stupid. Blair forged it. I sealed it. You know it. I know it. Pay the note quietly. Sign the settlement. Let the guarantee die in a drawer. No charges. And you come home, I mean it fully, I'll put your name back where it belongs. Sweetheart, her voice warmed a sound I'd waited 31 years to hear. And it was terrible to finally hear it now. Then she told me a truth I never expected. You think I'm a monster. My own father handed the store keys to my brother when I was 26. Because he had the smile. I swore I'd never split what I had into halves that both lose. I backed the one who shined. Because nobody ever backed me. That's not cruelty. Marlo, that's how it works. I believed every word. And I finally saw the flaw in what she was offering. If it can be purchased, it was never the thing I was starving for. I asked her one question. If Windsong had worked, would you have ever called me? The vent hummed. She looked at me the way she looked at inventory and chose accuracy over comfort. She said nothing at all. It was the most honest conversation we ever had. Back at the table, I said my piece on the record. There's no partnership. And there never was. I won't pay the note. My affidavit of forgery goes to First Union this afternoon. The notarization complaint goes to the state this week. I don't want their money, their store, or 1 acre of what's left. I want my name out of their books. That's all I've ever wanted. I just spent 30 years calling it something else. My mother stood. Composure failing in public for the first time in my life. You'd hand your own mother to the state. Over paperwork. I squared my folder to the table edge. Out of Abbott. You notarized it. Mom, paper is where you put me. It's the only place you ever put me. Within 3 weeks, First Union rescinded the forged guarantee rather than let a story surface about a branch accepting a seal without verifying a signer. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice before Thanksgiving. My mother surrendered her notary commission ahead of revocation. She and Blair entered a state diversion agreement restitution. An admission on record. No trial. Some viewers will say that's too soft. I asked for exactly that. Because the sentence that mattered had already been served. In a small, cold room. In the silence after my question, Blair caught me in the parking lot after mascara actually moving. You could have saved us. You had the money. No. Blair, I said, I could have paid for you. That's not the same thing. Nobody ever taught either of us the difference. The bill was real legal fees I'll never recover. A permanent nickname back home. 2 clients who quietly drifted off. But that spring, my parents' house went up for sale. My father called once from the store's back room. Landline. Compressor running for cover. Your grandmother would have done the same thing you did. She'd have done it faster. Long pause. Don't tell your mother I said that. Click. In April. An envelope arrived from the Ohio Secretary of State. Sutton Family Holdings, LLC, amended filing. Membership updated. My name released. A dozen years of paper ended in 1 line. And it weighed nothing at all. 6 months later, a gray sedan idled at the end of my lane, my mother behind the wheel. Blair got out and stood in the road. Looking at my house, the storm shutters, I'd hung myself, the garden I'd built along a limestone shelf where the county map said nothing would grow. She screamed at the windshield, loud enough to carry over the tide. Why does she get everything? It was supposed to be me. My mother sat with both hands at 10 and 2, staring at my house like a woman doing inventory one last time and finding the count impossible. I understood something, watching from behind my screen door with coffee going cold. Neither of them was looking at me at all. Blair was screaming at the machine, and behind the wheel of that machine sat its very first victim, still driving it. The sedan backed out of my lane. It's the last time my family ever came to where I live. Life afterward insisted on being ordinary, which is the whole prize. My firm sits at 60 clients and a waiting list I guard like a garden fence. Otto still tells everyone at the marina I fought a bank with a calculator and won. And it gets more beloved every time he tells it. Some evenings I sit by that garden, coffee gone cold, and take stock the way I always have assets. Liabilities, the honest column. And the number that comes back is 1, my mother's arithmetic never had a line for times enough. Nobody handed it to me. Nobody can call it due. Nobody gets to appraise it off my shelf again. If there's one thing I'd carve over every kitchen table in this country, it's this: your worth was never the number somebody else wrote next to your name. People who make you buy their love are selling something broken. The moment you stop renting space in their ledger and start keeping your own books on your own dirt, you find out the accounting was wrong your whole life. You were never the rock in their garden. You were the seed they refused to water. And seeds wait. Seeds grow anyway. If you've ever had to bring your own dirt, if you built a life out of what they called wasted space, tell me in the comments. Somebody down there needs your version tonight. Subscribe to Stillwater's story time before you go. Next week's story starts with a birthday. Nobody in the family remembered but her.